On the eve of the Iowa caucuses, C-SPAN's Newsmakers is pleased to welcome from Iowa the governor of the state, Terry Branstad. Governor Branstad last year made history as the longest serving governor ever. We welcome him to our program this week. Thanks for being here, Governor.
Well, it's great to be with you, and welcome to beautiful sunny Iowa on this eve of the Iowa caucuses.
Well, we look forward to learning more about your perspective on it. Let me introduce the two reporters who will be asking you questions about the caucuses. James Hohman covers national politics for the Washington Post. Alex Eisenstadt, national politics for Politico. And before we get to the reporters' first questions, I wanted to talk to you about logistics and infrastructure for just a minute. As the person whose state is going to be in the international spotlight on Monday night, are you confident that all systems are go, from public safety to the vote counting to the two parties getting the precincts organized? Is everything set and ready to go in your mind?
Yes. Both of our political parties, Republicans and Democrats, have worked together over many decades, really, on having the caucuses the same night. And now with all the technology and everything, I think we're going to see and yet we're expecting a record turnout. So there could be some challenges with that. Obviously, the weather, they're saying we could have a snowstorm come in Sunday night. Those things are unexpected that could affect it. But I think we're going to have a great caucus. I think it's going to be a record turnout. Iowans take their responsibility very seriously, and the parties in the state have all worked together. We're very proud of the Iowa caucuses, and we want to do all we can to keep the Iowa caucuses first in the nation, the first test where real voters decide who they support to be the next leader for the United States.
Well, James Hohman, let's turn to you for our first political question for the governor.
Great. Governor, thank you so much for being with us. Obviously, exciting time. You've been through a lot of these caucuses before, going back a long time to really the beginning of the Iowa caucus process. How many tickets do you think there will be out of Iowa this caucus? Obviously, we have that top two fight between Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, but how many people are going to emerge from Iowa going forward?
Well, historically, we said there's 3 tickets out of Iowa, but this time on the Republican side, we have such a big field that I think there might be 4 or 5. So I expect there might be more. And it's an expectation game, so it's not only who wins, but who beats expectations. And that's one of the things that I think everybody's going to be looking at on Monday night is who beats expectations. It's a very different situation this year. It's kind of an outsider's year. And amazingly, everybody thought it was going to be a coronation for Secretary Clinton. And now we see Bernie Sanders is really surging. That race is going to be very close. The Democrat rules are that if you don't get 15%, you're not considered viable. So a lot may hinge on who do the O'Malley people go for if they don't have 50% in their caucus. That could well determine who wins on the Democratic side. On the Republican side, we have the Trump phenomenon. He has drawn huge crowds here, but he skipped the debate. And a lot of people, I'd say conventional wisdom says that wasn't a smart thing to do. But he's done a lot of things that conventional wisdom would say weren't smart, but he seems to be holding up as the leader. And I guess time will tell when people actually go and vote in the caucuses on Monday night. I do think the level of interest is higher than ever. The turnout for the candidates has been tremendous. And so I'm expecting a record turnout for the Iowa caucuses.
Governor, you just talked about Donald Trump a little bit. I'm curious, to what extent do you view him as the front runner? Where do you see this race between him and Ted Cruz right now, and how certain are you that one of those two will win the caucuses?
Well, Ted Cruz was ahead in Iowa, but as people have figured out his stand on things that are really important to the economy of this state, such as renewable fuels, ethanol, biodiesel, wind energy, he has been an opponent of the renewable fuel standard and has introduced legislation that would eliminate that, and that's tens of thousands of jobs in our state. It's important for farm income. He's also against the wind energy tax credit, and we have almost 30% of our electricity now generated by wind, and companies like Facebook and Google and Microsoft have chosen to locate in Iowa because so much of our electricity comes from renewable energy from wind. And I think his stand on that issue is definitely going to hurt him. And I think we've seen in recent polls that he was ahead, but now he's dropped behind Trump. But another question is, some of the other candidates did really well in the debate, such as Rubio and Chris Christie and Bush, I think, did better than expected. And will that have an impact? That Iowa debate, I think there's a lot of people in this state, and you know, Iowa voters a lot of times wait to the last to make up their mind. So I'm still one of those voters that's not made the final decision who I'm going to vote for in the caucuses. And I'm probably like a lot of Iowa voters at this point in time, but we're going to go to the caucus, and between now and then we'll have to decide who we're going to vote for.
You mentioned that final debate Thursday night, and you said, you know, Rubio, Christie, Bush did well. Did Cruz do poorly in that debate? He obviously was on the defensive over the renewable fuel standard and energy issues.
Well, that plus he was criticizing the moderator, and he got booed for that. I just think that it was a poor performance on his part, and some of the other candidates came across a lot better. So, and obviously his stand on renewable energy is very much at odds with Iowans, and there's tens of thousands. We have 43 ethanol plants. We have 12 biodiesel plants. We have 2 cellulosic ethanol plants. We have a number of plants that are making wind towers and turbines and blades and people involved. So, and it's farm income too. When you have a wind turbine on your land, you get income from that. Corn is sold to the ethanol plants. Farmers get back DDGs to feed their cattle. So renewable energy is very important to our state, and a lot of jobs are at stake. And I think his stand against renewable energy will have an impact in this state.
Governor, you and Senator Cruz had some words for each other indirectly earlier this week. He suggested that you were sort of part of the Washington establishment or D.C. Washington cartel. And I'm curious how you feel about that, about some of those words that Senator Cruz had for you.
Well, first of all, I've been urged to run for national office many times, but I have never had an interest in running for the Senate or any national office because I love Iowa, and I've been elected 6 times as the governor of Iowa. In the last election, I carried 98 of the 99 counties. I go to every county every year, and so I have no connection to Washington, D.C. or the lobbyists in D.C. The only time I go to D.C. is to talk to our congressional delegation about things that are important to the people of Iowa. And I'm an advocate for Iowa and Iowa jobs and farmers and growing income in this state. I'm proud to say we lead the state, we lead the nation in renewable energy, be it ethanol, biodiesel, and wind. We're also seeing significant growth in solar energy as well. And I have a major proposal now on water quality as well to protect this valuable resource for the benefit of future generations. So I think he obviously doesn't know me. He doesn't understand that I'm the governor of the state of Iowa, and I have no connection to Washington, D.C. whatsoever. In fact, I've chosen time and time again not to run for national office.
The good answer. You mentioned that you think there's going to be record turnout. I'm interested to hear sort of why. You said, you know, kind of alluded to the fact that Trump and Sanders have tapped in to voters who haven't historically participated. But there's been a lot of talk and coverage about the ground game. You know, unlike a primary, going to a caucus is a more significant investment of time. You know, and so there have been stories about how Trump doesn't have as good a ground game or field operation as some of the other candidates. How much does that matter? And have you picked up on that too?
Well, it's an organizational battle, but I guess one of the reasons why I think the turnout is going to be huge is the turnout to events. Trump had 1,700 people in Ottumwa. So I didn't know there were 1,700 Republicans in Ottumwa. So that, you know, that's a huge turnout. You know, he had his alternative event he put together on short notice at Drake University, which had overflow capacity in competition to the Republican debate on Thursday night. So it's just hard to judge that. Also, the other candidates are getting record turnouts as well. So, I just think when you have this many candidates, they're all working hard. A lot of them are spending a lot of time here in Iowa. A number of candidates have gone to all 99 counties, and I think that's a way to generate turnout. And also, on the Democratic side, we see a lot of young people and first-time voters that are going to come out and vote for Sanders. Somewhat similar to what we saw 8 years ago for Obama. Nobody thought Obama would win Iowa. Hillary Clinton was the favorite, and yet she came in third. So we'll see if history repeats itself.
Governor, can I ask a question just on turnout and what the role of the independents will be? Your Secretary of State just put out new numbers as we're talking on this Friday morning. Total registration of Democrats, 584,000, Republicans, 612, and independents, 628,000. I'm wondering how you think those independents will break on Monday.
Well, in this state, you can change your registration normally on Election Day, in this case on caucus night. So all you have to do is, if you want to caucus in the Republican caucus, you go to that Republican caucus site and change your registration. If you want to do it on the Democratic side, you do the same thing. So I suspect a lot of people with the interest and the attention here, I think a number of independents will decide to caucus with one party or the other. And obviously they can change back to become a no-party voter the next day if they want to. But I think we're going to see tens of thousands of people who are not registered Republican or Democrat. They're going to come to the caucuses and participate in whichever one they feel the most interested in.
Sure, but that's a process answer, and I'm wondering about your political hat. I mean, you know these people in the state. How do you think the independents are going to break on caucus night?
I think because of the number of Republican candidates that we're going to see, a lot of them, they're going to come out and vote in the Republican caucus. But I think Sanders is also attracting a significant amount of people, and especially young people that have never caucused before. And so we may see a significant number that come out and caucus for Sanders, and that's probably going to be the key if he's going to carry Iowa, is for him to get a lot of those first-time caucus goers, as well as people that are for O'Malley if they don't get to the 15% viability. The Democratic caucus has a different rule. Republicans, it's really a secret ballot to vote for the presidential choice. On the Democratic side, they divide up into groups, and if you don't have 15%, your group is not considered viable, and then you have to choose, and in this case there's only 3 candidates, so you have to choose which of the other 2 you want.
Gentlemen, we're just past the halfway point.
Governor, I'm curious, if Donald Trump does win on Monday night, if he does win the caucus, does he become difficult to stop in terms of momentum, in terms of his ability to win the nomination? And also, I'm curious, what have your personal interactions with Donald Trump been like? Are you impressed with him as a candidate? Well,
I will say that Chris Christie was chair of the Republican governors, and he did an event for me at a golf course that Donald Trump owns in northern New Jersey. So I got help from both Trump and Chris Christie, more from Chris Christie because he chaired the Republican governors. He not only helped me, but he helped Republicans win in Illinois and Massachusetts and Maryland, very difficult states, and helped defend Republican governors in places like Michigan and Wisconsin and whatever. But Donald Trump is a very interesting individual, and he's a very unconventional candidate. I would have never imagined that, what he did is he brought his helicopter to the Iowa State Fair and gave kids rides. So he's done a lot of unconventional things in this campaign. And then skipping the debate, certainly not something I would have advised, but he put on his own show. And I think both Huckabee and Santorum, who previously won the caucuses, went to his event because they didn't get invited to the debate that included the top 7.
You mentioned Huckabee and Santorum, Governor, the last 2 caucus winners on the Republican side. If Cruz wins Iowa, and then goes on to lose the nomination. Do you worry about the kind of the legitimacy of the caucuses, the kind of the special place it holds if 3 winners in a row of the caucuses go on to lose the nomination?
Well, I would point out the last 2 presidents of the United States started out by winning the Iowa caucuses.
True.
George W. Bush and Barack Obama. So, and all you have to do is ask Rudy Giuliani what skipping the Iowa caucuses did for him. He thought he could skip the Iowa caucuses and it would all start in Florida. But by the time it got to Florida, it was too late. So I think you skip Iowa at your own risk. And this year we've seen a lot of activity from all the candidates here in the Iowa caucuses, some more than others. And Iowa tends to reward people that go all over the state, meet with people and answer their questions. And that's what I do. That's what Senator Grassley does, and my Lieutenant Governor Kim Reynolds and Joni Ernst. And so Iowans are, you might say, spoiled by attention, but they take their responsibility seriously, and oftentimes they want to meet a candidate 2 or 3 times before they decide who they're going to vote for.
Governor, I'm curious, where do you see Marco Rubio? How do you see Marco Rubio faring right now? Does he finish in the top 2 or top 3? Could you see a top 2 finish with him? Does he surprise people on Monday? How do you rate his prospects right now?
I think he had a very strong showing in the debate, and it's all about peaking on. You know, I always say the only poll that counts is the one they take on election day, or in this case, on caucus night. So I think he's got some momentum going into it. How well he's going to do, my sense is I don't think he's got as strong an organization as some of the other candidates, but there seems to be a lot of interest and a lot of enthusiasm for his candidacy. I think he did come in second to Trump in a poll that was done by the Secretary of State among students. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, students tend to vote like their parents, and maybe he has an advantage being a younger candidate. So, you know, I think you got to take that into consideration. But certainly he's one to watch. I think Chris Christie is another one that had a really good debate performance, and we'll see what kind of impact that has because the debate was so close to the actual voting on Monday night.
That's the second time you mentioned Chris Christie, the New Jersey governor, obviously the chair of the RGA, helped out a lot in Iowa in that 98 county win in 2014. A bunch of your folks who worked on that 2014 campaign are helping out Governor Christie in the state. He had sort of been pretty much heavily focused on New Hampshire. He's pivoted toward Iowa, spent a lot more time there in the final weeks. I guess, one, why didn't you endorse Christie? If you know there's so many of your biggest donor supports him, your former staff support him, and 2, is he going to get rewarded for putting that extra time on the ground that, you know, someone like John Kasich is now leaving Iowa and not coming back until the caucuses?
Yeah, Kasich is another very good governor, but he's put most of his focus and effort in New Hampshire. Christie spent a lot of time in New Hampshire too, but I think a lot of the people that worked in my campaign appreciated all the assistance and help that we received in both 2010 and especially in 2014 from Chris Christie. I, as governor, want to be a good host and welcome to all the candidates, and that's why I didn't think it would be appropriate for me to endorse anybody before the Iowa caucuses. But I do respect that really all the candidates that are coming and spending their time and money in Iowa, traveling the state, getting to know the people of Iowa. This is a great opportunity for us. We take this responsibility very seriously, and that's why I'm very optimistic we're going to see an absolute great turnout on Monday night.
5 minutes left.
Governor, which candidate pressed you the hardest for your endorsement?
Well, I'm not... just about every one of them told me they'd love to have my endorsement, but they also were understanding that as governor, I felt that I should not endorse before the Iowa caucuses. So they were very understanding of the position that I've taken. The last time I endorsed a candidate, I think, was Bob Dole back in the 90s, and that's because he was almost like a third senator from Iowa. He was a strong supporter of renewable energy. He and Senator Grassley were very close, and we just had a wonderful relationship as we went through the farm crisis of the 80s and many of the challenges. Bob Dole was always there. Actually, he was there and did a fundraiser for me when I ran for lieutenant governor in Sioux City on October 30th, 1978, an event that I missed because the landing gear didn't work on our airplane. We had to do a belly landing. So I won't forget that date, October 30th, 78. Bob Dole was there for me.
The two factions in the Republican Party, have been critical of you in the past. The Ron Paul people took over the state party. You were able to kind of successfully get it back on track after it had some issues. Now Bob Vanderplaats, who ran against you in 2010, is one of Ted Cruz's most prominent surrogates traveling around. There's some thought that if Cruz won the caucuses, the social conservatives would try to take the party over again from some sort of more mainstream Republicans. Are you concerned about that, and are you taking any steps to avert that kind of situation?
Well, we need a Republican Party that supports all candidates. I'm proud to say in this last election, we won a Senate seat with Joni Ernst. We won two congressional seats with David Young and with Rod Blum. We are very optimistic in 2016 of gaining control of the state Senate, which we haven't had in many years. And you need a unified party, and you need party leadership that works for and supports all the candidates. As governor, I try to work for all the candidates and support the entire ticket, and I'm proud of the progress we made in 2014. I think 2016 can be a great year with Grassley leading the ticket in Iowa. He usually gets 65 to 70% of the vote. With the strong candidates we have for the legislature, I think we have a great chance to carry this state for our presidential candidate as well. And I'm going to do anything and everything I can to help the entire ticket. And we need a party that works for all the candidates. And that's what I've always believed in. And I'm very proud that, under the present leadership we have, Jeff Kaufman, the party has really worked well. We got our financial house in order, and they're doing a great job of supporting candidates and also hosting the debate and the caucuses.
1 minute left.
Governor, what you just said, though, does that mean you would support Ted Cruz if he's the Republican nominee?
Of course. I will support the Republican nominee and enthusiastically campaign for whoever the nominee is. But I just want the Iowa voters to be well informed and know who really supports Iowa industry and jobs and Iowa agriculture. And we know that renewable energy, be it ethanol, biodiesel, wind, or solar, is very important to our state. And we see great opportunities for growth in those areas in the future. We want to keep the momentum we have going for us.
Governor, in the 30 seconds we have left, as we were sitting in these seats this time last year, Jeb Bush was the presumptive man to beat in your party by most conventional wisdom. What happened to his campaign that he's in this low single digits in most of the polls around the country and can't seem to break out?
Well, let's wait until people have voted. I think we'll have to see what happens on caucus night on Monday night. He might surprise some people as to how well he does. I know he's got a lot of supporters and friends here in Iowa, as do the other candidates, and it just depends upon who turns out. I'm not going to prejudge what's going to happen on Monday night because I've been surprised before.
Well, thank you for being with us on Newsmakers this week, and all of us wish you well in the logistics for the caucuses, that everything turns out well for the state of Iowa and the voters there on Monday.
Thank you.
Thanks, Governor.
Thank you.
Well, what should people watching this program know? This Sunday morning when they're seeing this, the caucuses will be Monday night. Right. What should they know at this point about what's happening there and how important it is?
I think that there's going to be record turnout. That was, I think, the top line news there is that it is an open question. He mentioned the huge crowds that show up for Donald Trump. We don't know whether those people are actually going to go to caucus. When you talk to them, a lot of them have never caucused before. And that's why those registration numbers you brought up are so significant. The governor mentioned there could be a snowstorm Sunday night. So it really depends on whose people come to the polls. Same thing for Bernie Sanders on the Democratic side. He generates a lot of enthusiasm. A lot of college students support him. Will they actually come out and caucus for him? 8 years ago, everyone said Barack Obama has a lot of energetic supporters, but they're not actually going to come out and caucus, and they did. And turnout records were set that still haven't been broken, and Obama won the caucuses and the presidency. So it really, I think, is an open question. I think we got the sense from talking to the governor that it's a very, very fluid race, that third place slot will probably go to Marco Rubio, but it could go to someone else. The governor saying there's going to be 4 tickets out of Iowa was interesting. He clearly likes Chris Christie a lot. They're very close. I think he would have liked to endorse him, but if Christie finishes 4th, I do think that helps him going into New Hampshire the next week. And,
right.
and he seemed to be suggesting, there's going to be 4 tickets out. So I think Christie's hoping to get into that 4th slot and get some momentum from it.
And the expectations game, as you mentioned.
I will say, though, one of the things that's really fascinating to me about what the governor is saying is that he's sort of putting his thumb on the scale in a certain way. The fact that you have the governor of Iowa coming out so strongly against Ted Cruz, who's in some ways the front runner in the state right now, is kind of a remarkable development. And he's not mincing his words. He's not speaking in coded language about this. I mean, he is being really upfront, really blunt about his feelings. And look, Governor Branstad saying he would support Ted Cruz if he were the nominee, but that's about the only nice thing he has to say about him.
And it actually is a departure from some public comments he's made in recent days. That was a super interesting interview because he has been careful, I think, publicly in Iowa to talk about how it's great for everyone and he likes everyone. And I think emboldened by Cruz's rough debate on Thursday night, the governor really did unload pretty hard on Cruz. And the other thing is the governor's son, we should note, Eric, is running the agriculture industry's effort against Cruz. It spent millions of dollars attacking him for his position on ethanol. And Cruz is taken a lot of hits for a lot of different issues, not just ethanol, we should say, but Governor Branstad and his son clearly, if Cruz doesn't win Iowa, will attribute it to the ethanol issue, which I think you saw him laying the groundwork to do during our interview.
And who did the governor not criticize? Donald Trump.
Right.
In fact, spoke rather positively of him
really
throughout the
remarkably,
interview.
yeah.
And what is the tea leaves that he didn't speak about Jeb Bush until prompted?
That he's just a non-factor. It's really amazing. Jeb Bush has some impressive staffers in Iowa, people who have actually worked for Branstad closely in the past, and he just hasn't connected. He has a lot of endorsements, sort of, the activists who you'd think might be able to help him connect. One of the things that is interesting is that the governors aren't breaking through. Terry Branstad, as you noted at the top, the longest serving governor now in U.S. history. He's close with a lot of these guys. He's watched them grow up, and it really is amazing. John Kasich, Chris Christie, Jeb Bush, none of the top 3 or 4 candidates in the polls are governors. And I think that's hard for someone like Terry Branstad to see. And there's not really much he can do about it. It's just the mood of the moment, and experience is not an asset in this political season.
In a minute and a half we have left, let's talk about the Democrats.
Yeah. Well, look, what a race that is. And it's kind of remarkable to watch that race play out. Everyone thought Hillary Clinton was going to run away with this. That hasn't turned out to be the case. People may be talking more about the outcome of the Democratic race on Tuesday morning than the Republican one.
Right.
Totally true. I think you could have a very scattered Republican field. If it's 22%, with the votes going a bunch of different ways, it's hard for anyone to come out with clear momentum. Whereas the Democratic race could also be very close, or it could be a surprise.
And he talked a lot about process. Yeah. From what you've learned about the state, last time around the results were long in coming out. Have they fixed it with technology? Is everything going to work as well as it should on Monday night as far as you've been able to tell in your reporting?
It's still, I've done a lot of reporting on this. 4 years ago was a debacle. They declared Mitt Romney the winner on election night. 2 or 3 weeks later, they said actually Rick Santorum had won. I think they're nervous about that. They have some technology partnerships now, so the reporting should go more smoothly. But ultimately, you got to think about who's doing the reporting and the tabulating. You're only as strong as your weakest links. A lot of these caucus sites are, in the middle of nowhere. There are folks who aren't, elected, or people who do this all the time. They're volunteers who are, tabulating the results in, 1,700 different precincts. And so, if a couple of them do it wrong, and it's a very close caucus night, that could be pretty problematic. So I think the people I talked to are more confident than they were 4 years ago, but there's still some reason to be a little bit nervous that things could get tricky.
Alex, last question.
In terms of logistics, also, I think the weather is something that people are going to be talking about a lot as we head into caucus.
Well, my other question was on logistics of social media, because this is the most prominent election so far for social media. With people are sitting there with their Twitter feeds as they get into caucus halls and say, "Come on out, there's not enough people here." Is it likely to have an impact this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and it could, who has the best social media game of all these candidates? We don't really know. That's going to be a real unknown factor, because the role of social media in this is going to be way different than it was even 4 years ago.
Right. It is a mobilization game now, not just a persuasion game. In the past, you run some Facebook ads and stuff to reach people, YouTube ads. Now you're using these tools to try and drive people out. Again, Donald Trump, leading in all the final polls of Iowa, does not have as good a ground game as Ted Cruz. And so could that make a difference? When you actually have to go show up, it's not like you can go during 12 hours and cast your ballot and go on. There was a poll this week that showed half as many people in Iowa said they'd been contacted by the Trump campaign as said they'd been contacted by the Cruz campaign. Does that matter? We'll find out on Monday.
Well, it's finally here. Thanks very much for setting the stage on this eve of the Iowa caucuses, gentlemen.
Thank you.